Okay, so I've been riding electric bikes for about 5 years now. I originally had a Swytch Kit and I also won a Swytch Kit in a competition, and I put it on loads of different bikes, done a load of videos on it, and Yose Power contacted me recently and offered me this kit to test. This is a 28-inch kit with battery, so let's have a look at what's in the box. So here's the 28-inch wheel, which is the same as 700C on a road bike, but also the same sort of size that you would put on a 29er mountain bike. And if we have a look at the weight, 3,651 grams, and it's not got any rim tape on it, so I'm going to have to put some rim tape on there before I put an inner tube on there. But actually everything else is very well catered for. So if we have a look, they supply me with a full set of Allen keys. I've even got a crank puller. So basically to be able to pull the crank arm off. I've already got one of these, but it's nice that they supply that, because you do need to take the crank arm off to be able to fit the pedal sensor. And this is quite a cool one actually. Now with the Swytch Kit there was 2 bits that you had to use with it. This is just 1 bit, so you can see there's a plug at one end to plug the cable to connect it to the main control box, but also this part just basically fits in between the crank arm and the crank. And this bit spins around when you're using the bike, and that's basically your pedal assist sensor. So the battery is a bit of a beast. It's a real weight. I need to pop that on the scales in a minute. We've got instructions here about the lithium battery, but also about setting it all up. I've got a few brackets here, some fuses. I've got a Clover charging cable, and the power charger, which is pretty much the same charger as my Wise Pendleton bike and my other 2 Swytch bikes. So we can see handily it says Yose Power on there, which is nice to have. 42 volt, 2 amp. We've got throttle control, which is nice to have. You had to pay extra for that on the Swytch Kit. I've got a light, and I'm not sure if it's a horn as well, because it's got these holes on the back, but I'll have a look at that later. Load of cable ties. You replace the brake levers on this kit, and again we've got this same sort of connection, so you can only plug it into 1 bit of the control lead, and that means your brake cables you don't need to take your brake cables out to be able to switch this in. I've got quite a nice size LCD display, which I really liked on the original Swytch Kit. The second Swytch Kit didn't have the LCD display, and in some ways I did miss it. And I've also got a bag which holds all the cables in it. So the reason I ordered the 700C wheel was basically I had this bike in mind, and this was very difficult to fit a Swytch Kit to. And if we have a closer look at it, the battery mount fits on perfectly, and you can see I've got the 2 basically bottle mounts here that it's attached to, and that's nice and firm. But the pedal assist sensor doesn't have enough room to be able to fit in. And also something really weird about this, if I take the crank arm off, using the supplied tool, so screw in first of all the thread. It looks like it's off, and that's just because it's a funny angle with this arm. And then once that's screwed in nice and tightly, screw in this outer part, and that will start pushing against the bottom bracket to pull the crank arm off. Now you can't usually do this with your fingers, but I've just taken it off, so that's why it's coming off easy. And then just give it a wobble and that comes off. Now the way the bottom bracket is and the way that the pedal sensor works, it should just push on, and you push it all the way into the pins in here, so this bit's flush. And then when it's turning around, you can see that it turns the black part, and that basically tells the bike to turn the motor on. But the trouble with this bottom bracket is twofold. So as I push this on, it actually gets stuck because there's a bit on the bottom bracket that sticks out really quite wide, and this won't push onto it. But also this little part, which in a normal bottom bracket wouldn't be an issue, would basically protrude out over here. So it'd be like that and on here. I can't do that because this is an eccentric bottom bracket, which is a weird bottom bracket. To be fair, these are very rare. I've never had a bike with an eccentric bottom bracket, but it's because it has hub gears. So this type of pedal sensor isn't suitable for this type of bike. They do mention 3 other types of pedal assist sensors, so this is the one I got supplied. I've got one of these or 2 of these that I've got with Swytch kits. I'm probably going to try and set up my Scott bike that you just saw with throttle only rather than use pedal assist. I also bought this bike for £30 off Facebook, and I thought it would be perfect for it. Plenty of room for the pedal sensor, as you can see. But the battery mount, small problem, there are no lugs on the frame at all. I did find a few videos like this one from RJ the Bike Guy, where you can drill holes and add bottle cage mounts to your bike, but I'm not sure if I'm prepared to drill the frame that I've got. I also saw on eBay there's a few kits that seem to do the same sort of thing, but I'm not sure if they're quite strong enough for a battery, although this one, how to mount a down tube battery on a frame that is too small. So there are solutions of how to mount. You can see there's some sort of strapping on there, and they're like Jubilee clips, which would be strong, and they do a triple bob, which is so I guess 3 mounts that mount onto the battery, and there's one here which is mounted underneath the bike. So all sorts of solutions are available, but in the end I've decided to go with my giant bike, which has currently got a Swytch Kit on it. So I'm going to put the 700C wheel on the front of that, and I know that I'm going to be able to complete the installation without having to do any modifications. So first up, let's get these bolts out so I can put the disc on, and take the old bolts out of the old wheel and the old disc off and put it on the new one. You can see from this that the Swytch Kit and the Yose Power use exactly the same connector to the motor. Okay, so let's see if we can get this crank arm off. So undo this fully, or at least a flush, and then screw in. You've got to go far enough in so that it doesn't pull the thread when you come out. Yeah, it's pretty far in. So let's see how much pressure it needs to pull the arm off. Can't remember the last time I took this one off. Oh, it's pretty tight. Okay, I'm going to put it on the floor because it needs more leverage than being in the bike stand. Unfortunately it was rusted on, so I had to use a 7-foot pole for leverage. Okay, let's pop the pedal sensor on. Okay, so I've got enough room here, but this also tapers out as well. So whereas with this bottom bracket, I can get this to go all the way on. In fact, I can push it so far that it's hard to get out. I have to use a screwdriver to get it out. But on this one, it only goes that far. And I've noticed that all it is this inner layer, which there is a line there. I'm just going to have to cut that out because that's going to be inside and it's going to be on the crank, so it's going to spin with the crank anyway. But this bit fits absolutely fine. So if I push that in, as long as you get it lined up, it will go completely flush. There you go, like that, completely flush. Let me move that over a bit. So I'm going to have to cut that one down. I could change the bottom bracket, but I'm not sure if I've got one the same width, but it doesn't look like a hard job to cut through that. Okay, so you can see I've taken that bit out, so the radius is much bigger now. I can shave this down, but I'm going to see if it'll fit as it is. Okay, that's fit. Okay, so that's gone in and that's turning nicely. Perfect. Pop this in. Again, just have to line it up and it will go nice and flush. And that will be held in place with the crank arm. And a bit of grease so it doesn't get quite so stuck next time. There we go. Oh, bit of grease on the bolt as well. And mine came with this bolt which goes near the battery terminal, otherwise the battery will hit the bolt. If you use an original bolt, they're just too high. This is shallower and so there's enough room for the battery. So let's pop that on there. Okay, so it's too tight because it's hitting the frame. So I might have to spin it around, which I think I can do. So let's pop that on and lock that into place and use the key to secure it. and that puts like a deadbolt down into the bottom, so that's not going anywhere. Well, that's definitely taking shape. Okay, so I've begun to cable tie the cable from the motor up the forks, around the top here, and attached it to the brake cable. And I've got to do a bit more cable tying because it is actually a very long cable. So if I grab this, you can see that it is super long, but obviously I have the bag that I can tidy it away in, although I think with this one it's just going to have to go down the down tube and come back again. But I've got loads of cable ties, so that's okay. So I think I'm going to go up here. I think I'll go round with the brake cable actually. And I know that the brake cables will give enough room for the steering and everything. And how much cable have we got left? So basically the power cable here needs to plug in, and there's a little tiny arrow which is here, and this just pushes together a nice firm push. So I'm going to tidy this bit in a bit later, but at the moment at least it's out the way because I want to do a bit of testing to see what's working and what's not working. So first of all, what happens if we plug in the pedal assist sensor? So this is the one that I put down here, and actually something worth mentioning, I put a cable tie here just because it's the right sort of width between the crank. So as it's turning around, it does turn the cable tie, but then it stops when it hits the sensor. But it just means that this is going to stay on and in place nicely because there's no gap. So this cable is obviously going to have to run up here and again plug into the main control box. And you can see what the connections are like. There's only one way they go. Just line up the arrows and they pop together. These are waterproof connections. So this cable now needs to plug in, and the first bit plugs into, again, the control box, lining up, yeah, and that's in. And on the end of this are various different things. So this is the light, which I guess is optional. These two are the brake sensors. So a cable goes from this to each brake lever. So when you pull the brake lever, that cuts the power. Then we have throttle control, because we've got a throttle to go on the handlebars, and this is for the LCD display. So let's plug in the LCD display first. Very handily, everything is the right color so it all matches up. Pop together, and now we should be able to turn on. So press and hold the power, and let's see if we get any errors. We don't get any errors, so I've got no brake sensors at the moment. I've only attached the pedal assist sensor. So if I start to turn the pedals, the wheel starts to go round. So I know that that bit's working. So from a bare minimum point of view, I mean, it's obviously better to have brake sensors. You could set it up like that. I wonder what happens if I just use throttle. So let's disconnect the pedal assist sensor, and we're going to connect just the throttle. Well, there's only one that will go into. And then if we switch the power on, so again, no errors. If I move back a bit so you can see the wheel, and if I push down on the throttle control, you can see that it's working, nice and responsive. I can go very slow, or I can go flat out. And you can see the speed shows on here. I'm going to need to choose the wheel size. I haven't seen that in the instructions yet, but I'll have a look at that later. But so as a bare minimum, you can just have throttle control or just pedal assist. So hardly anything set up at all, and it still works. That's good if a long time down the road you get a faulty component, you know that things are going to still work. So now if I attach just one of the brake levers, again, everything's got the arrows, everything lines up. You will get on the display, it will tell you if there's a problem. Now, if I turn it off and try and turn it on with the brake lever not closed, it comes up with an error. So error 25. But if I close that brake lever, you can see that it's all right. If I pull the throttle, but then to the brake lever, you can see the throttle doesn't work when I'm engaging the brake lever. So again, you can do this in a minimal setup. So all I've got is display, throttle, and brake lever. I can obviously plug in the pedal assist so I can have those as an option, but it's nice to be able to switch between them. And it's nice to know that I can use it on my Scott bike, the white bike earlier on, where the battery did fit on the right way, but I had trouble with the pedal assist sensor because it's a very weird crank, that I know I can use it on that setup with throttle control instead of pedal assist. But let's get all these things mounted on the bike. I think I'm just going to use one brake lever. I didn't use any brake levers on this bike when I had a Swytch Kit and just throttle, and it was absolutely fine, but I'm going to put one brake lever on. Now I always use lock-on grips now because it's just so much easier if you ever have to take anything off. So let's just unscrew that and show how easy it is to get everything on and off. If you have got rubber grips, what I usually do is put this side down and then pour boiling water over it. Obviously be careful with your hands, and just try and lift up the seam and then twist it off, and that tends to work if you've got some really stubborn grips. But as you can see, this is super easy. This bar's a bit corroded, but we can cover that up in a minute. And take the lever off. So I've loosened this cable so I've got loads of room to enable me to be able to pull this bit out. So now this should twist off. Let's take the old Swytch throttle off. Replace with the new throttle. New brake lever and grip. And let's pop the display on the other side in the same way. These lock-on grips are so simple but really effective. I'll put a link in the description for Amazon. So we've got our display on one side, and on the other side you can see I've fitted the brake cable here and the cable that tells the bike to stop providing power. Okay, I'm not going to use the bag because my battery is oriented the wrong way. Now probably what I should do, on the Yose Power site there is an adapter, and I'll show it on the screen now, so I could basically flip this 180 and have the battery up, and then all the cabling is going that way and in through here. But because my battery is the wrong way around, I can't really do that. So I'm not going to use the bag in this installation, but I will on my Scott bike when I do it on there. Okay, so I ended up just putting a load of cable ties on to make sure everything was in place. So you can see the pedal sensor, the cable going up here. I actually ended up with the power cable going all the way around and down and underneath because I just thought it looked a lot neater, as I didn't end up using the bag, and I think it looks all right. So I'm in my garage and I thought I'd show how the light works. So basically if you just press the plus button and hold it down, the light comes on, but also as you can see the display lights up, because obviously if you're cycling at night you want to see how fast you're going. And if we have a look at my garage door, you can see the light is actually pretty bright. So let's have a look at the display. So if we power on, you can see it comes on as kilometers per hour. I want to change that, so if I press the plus and minus together, this is just to reset the trip counter. But if I press the power button and press it again, so this is the units 2, so we want to say miles per hour, and then if we turn that off, it should save the setting. You can see it already says miles per hour. So if we press those two buttons again, so the plus and the minus, and then we press the minus and the power buttons, there you go. And this is the size of the wheel. So at the moment, 26-inch is ever so slightly smaller than this, so actually the speed will be faster than it's registered. It should be on 700C. So let's store that bit in. And then this is the maximum speed. So let's say 40, let's see what it will go up to. And then press and hold the power, and that's ready to go. And you can see I've already ridden to work today, 3.8 miles it's done so far. So I'm going to take it out and have a little ride. So it goes along nicely up this slight incline. I'm at 16 miles an hour on just throttle alone, and it's coping with it really well. It's going to be a steep hill in a minute, so I'm definitely going to have to pedal. But with the assist it should be pretty easy. Yeah, this is a really steep hill, and yeah, it's coping with it. I'm pedaling, but not pedaling hard deliberately, as it's 27 degrees outside. Definitely noisier than the Swytch Kit when it's under strain. but not so noisy that it would be annoying. Okay, so a bit more climbing. Oh, bit of wheel spin, because I've not got two hands on the bars. It makes light work of this. Up another steep bit. Throttle only. Not sure if I can get up this hill. Quite uneven, but it's coping with it well. I wouldn't have thought about cycling up here. It'd be worth it for the view. Oh, pheasant. So after that ride, I'd put another 9 miles on the bike, and the battery power, I think it only lost one little notch on it. So there was plenty more power, and I was going off-road up some very steep hills. Obviously some of the time I was going downhill, so it wasn't using any power at all. But this brings me to the side of how far you're going to go on a battery, and I think it really is incalculable. There's so many different variables to riding an electric bike. I did find this quite nice bike calculator, and obviously they put a lot of work into this, but I did find some flaws about various different things. So if I look at the battery and kit that I've got, so I've got the 28-inch, so 700C wheel with the battery, with the display, with the brake levers, the throttle. So this is the kit that I was sent. And you can see it's 36 volt, 15.6 amp hours, and it's 250 watt kit. So if we go to this calculator and you say the average speed, well, the average speed in the UK, 15 miles per hour, is the top speed for an electric bike. As you saw in the video, I could put the speed to whatever I want, although putting it to 40, it's not going to go at 40 on a 250 watt kit on its own. With pedaling, it means that it's still going to assist you a bit, so that's pretty cool. But obviously obey your local laws. Level of effort, so you can see throttle only, so this is worst case scenario. This is, as I was doing in the video, quite a lot of it just sat there with the throttle on, just being driven along like an electric scooter would be, I guess. The weight of the rider, obviously all this makes a difference. If you're half the weight, I reckon I'm not as much as 200 pounds, but I'm reasonably close to it, I guess. So I'm quite tall. So level of cadence. So with this, well, I've said throttle only, so it's a bit of a weird one really, that this still comes up and would make a difference. So let's put it to really low. Drive type, well, we don't have front hub, but rear hub is going to be very similar. The output's a weird one as well, because if you go full throttle, even though this is a 250 watt kit, it will show you that it's using about 500 watts. But if we drop it down to 250, so if you're using less throttle, you can see you go further. 500 watts, you go less. And then battery voltage, well, mine is a 36 volt, so that goes down a bit. But my milliampage is 15.6, which is closer to 16, so let's do that as well. And you can keep going. There's loads and loads of settings in here, although I did find that it's a bit strange when you change. So bearing in mind I chose throttle only, so it doesn't matter how many gears I've got because I'm throttle only. But if I pick single speed, which is what the bike was, I lose 2 miles. And if I go single speed on here, I lose more miles again. So, take it with a pinch of salt, but realistically you will go really quite far. And some people on forums, you'll see they do oh, I've done 100 miles on my kit, and then other people will say, oh, I've only done 15 miles and the battery's flashing. Well, that's because they're not pedaling and the other person is using like an eco mode and using some pedal assist, but also, you know, putting an amount of effort in. But rest assured, you will really go quite far with this kit. It is a hefty battery, and obviously some kits have gone the other way and gone with a lighter weight battery, which doesn't give you very much range, but you would end up charging it every day. With this one, I mean, depending on how much you're doing it, then maybe you're charging it once a week or more, depending on what sort of distances you cover. Now, if we go back to their site, there are loads of kits. They haven't asked me to do this, they just asked me to review the kit, but you can see you can choose your battery size, e-bike kit conversion with battery. I would always prefer to get a kit with a battery. The battery's the expensive bit, but also you want to make sure that everything all is compatible and works together. And I did see accessories is pretty good on here. I showed this a little bit in the video earlier on, but you've got hydraulic brake sensors because the standard kit doesn't support hydraulic brakes. You've got the various different pedal sensors. We've got a cover for the battery, another pedal assist sensor, replacement charger. £30 might seem like a lot for a charger, but actually these chargers, like a laptop charger, are always much more expensive. Display kit, controller, but the controller on mine was built into this part, the battery holder. This is the kit, so if your down tube only has 2 bolts in the wrong place, you can actually have 3 bolts and you can move it up the tube. So that would work really well for the bike that I showed last. Throttle control, we've got the 5-in-1 kit, another pedal assist sensor, another battery adapter, and some brake sensors. So loads of accessories, lots of things in stock, and if you go in the conversion kits, all sorts of kits are showing in stock and available. But I would say try and get the ones with the battery, because then you've got the whole lot and you can just get fitting it. But this is a really good price. If you consider, well, if I did manage to fit it on my £30 bike, then some of these kits would have been, what, £340, including that. So I've got an e-bike for under £400. And you can always find bikes for that sort of price, especially mountain bikes on Facebook around here. They're always showing up at around about £30. I've even seen some 29ers show up for about £50–60, and they've been alright with disc brakes and so on. So really pleased with it. Thanks very much to Yose Power for sending me this kit. I really like the battery mounted on the frame. I do prefer it to on the handlebars, having tried it. And I've got no issues with front motors. I've used that on a Swytch Kit and front motors are great. You might have seen a little bit of wheel spin in the video, but that's because I was holding a GoPro, going up a steep hill and leaning back slightly. As long as you put your weight forward on loose ground, you'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.